The sand wasn't even real. It shimmered like glass, hissed like steam, and clung to skin in a way that suggested petty vengeance. Beneath its surface, sensors monitored dehydration rates, temperature variance, and emotional distress, streaming live to every subscriber in the spiral arms. And above it all, suspended from silver filaments like the galaxy's most expensive chandelier, floated the misted audience pods, where elite species lounge in moist, breathable comfort. The hydrationless trial of Thurax had begun. Announcers boomed from every angle. Welcome to the 987th Annual Intergalactic Dry World Survival Trial, sponsored by the Royal House of Gleph, the Aquafaith Consortium, and Thirst Aid. A pause. Then louder. Let the suffering commence. Beneath the blistering sky, a cluster of competitors stood on the arena floor. Each was a chosen warrior of their people, a testament to physiology, tactics, or brute survival. Cameras swiveled toward a gelatinous cone, dripping slowly, beside a hissing feathered reptile. The cone belched. The reptile fainted. Off to the side, a tall, bipedal being adjusted her wrist cuff. She wore no ceremonial robes, no family crest, no water pump cooling exosuit. Her tunic was simple, utilitarian, woven tight from carbon-threaded mesh. Dust clung to her calves. Her skin, tan and ordinary by human standards, already shimmered with a thin sheen of heat. Her name blinked in dim blue across a hovering placard overhead. Ellie Tran, Homo sapiens. Earth 3. Hydration source. Classified. Odds. For 72:1. The announcers hesitated for only a second before leaning gleefully into the punchline. And here we have a delightful entry from the wettest backwater in the Orion cluster, Earth, home of weeping mammals and primitive umbrellas. Laughter erupted from the upper pods. A Phlegmorian noble squirted amusement through a secondary gill. A cluster of Draken warlords slapped their claws against the sides of their mist bubbles. Somewhere near the north observation deck, bets were recalculated mid-cheer. Ellie shifted her weight onto her back foot. She didn't look at the crowd. She didn't need to. Their contempt had mass. It rippled across the artificial dunes like heat distortion. She felt it settle on her, like another layer of dust. The trial was a peace ritual, supposedly, a symbolic contest between species meant to prevent actual war. But everyone knew what it really was. Entertainment disguised as diplomacy. Every few cycles, one representative from each galactic polity was dropped into an artificial desert where no water was allowed, no tools could store liquids, and only survival instincts mattered. It was ancient. It was brutal. It was, despite the solemn branding, profitable. The reigning champion stood 30 paces to Ellie's left, 7 feet tall, wrapped in obsidian scales, muscles bulging like coiled cables under thick armor plating. General Crawl Talk of the Draken Sovereignty, First Claw of the Fifth Flame, Slayer of the Flood Armada. He inhaled through gill slits with a sound like boiling lava, then spat onto the sand. The droplet sizzled, then vanished. He glanced over at Ellie with contempt so pure it was almost art. She didn't meet his gaze. She was too busy squinting at the fake sun and calculating humidity loss per second. One of the referees, a floating oar with 37 blinking eyes and a clipboard no one could read, began droning the official rules in 14 languages simultaneously. Ellie caught snippets. No tools capable of condensate storage. No outside assistance, including telepathic hydration boosts. Victory by elimination or extraction only. Legal precedent of Clause 17 Beta prohibits the use of any bodily excretions as weaponry. She tuned most of it out. Her fingers traced the seam of the object tucked behind her left hip, a matte black cube roughly the size of a fist. It made no sound, drew no attention. Her offering from Earth. Each contestant was required to bring one symbol of their culture's survival. Most brought weapons or relics. The Skren had arrived carrying a sacred mistfeather, which had already begun to desiccate. Crawl Talk's contribution was his own claws, a dramatic gesture, but also a political one, reminding everyone that Draken were their weapons. When Ellie laid her cube down on the ceremonial plate, several referees emitted distress whistles. The panel froze. Arguments burst across multiple frequencies. It contains a mesh coil. It is inert. It condenses vapor. It stores nothing. Clause 4 Silica forbids anything that mimics filtration. It does not filter. It captures. Eventually, a bored arbiter floated down and cleared his throat through a translator. Let the primitive fail with her trinket. This is not a contest of toys. That had been 6 minutes ago. Now the sun beat down like a fist. The heat wasn't just visual, it was psychological. Ellie could feel her breath thinning, her pores drawing inward. Her eyes began to dry. Crawl Talk flexed and took a single step forward. Sand crackled beneath his foot like broken teeth. He looked around theatrically, then raised his claws high. The crowd erupted. Cameras zoomed in. A countdown began. 5, 4. Ellie crouched slightly, touched her fingers to her temple. Her skin sizzled against the heat. 3, 2. She exhaled. 1. The bell rang. Everyone scattered. The Phlegmorian jiggled in panic. The scrent bolted up a dune, feathers already wilting. A spiny crustacean from the Yenti belt sprayed a defensive mist into the air and collapsed mid-scuttle. Crawl Talk didn't move. He watched Ellie. She knelt in the sand, carefully unfurling a panel from her tunic's back lining. It glinted briefly, like spider silk woven from steel. A condenser mesh. The announcers hiccuped mid-commentary. What is she doing? Surrendering already? But she wasn't surrendering. She was waiting. The cube beside her pulsed faintly, its inner coils warming. Ellie closed her eyes. Calculated moisture index. Atmospheric pull. Power retention curve. She smiled and said, for the first time in the arena, let's see who dries out first. The first lesson Ellie Tran learned in deep space wasn't about navigation or gravity or oxygen. It was about being underestimated. In every system she landed, every outpost she stepped through, there was always some 8-limbed war veteran or psionic aristocrat who looked her over and decided she couldn't possibly survive the week. Her shoulders were too narrow, her voice too calm, her tools too simple. Let them think that. It made the silence before the reversal that much sweeter. The arena's heat was climbing past tolerable thresholds. Ellie could feel it in her bones. The way the marrow dried, the skin pulled, the thoughts slowed. But she didn't flinch. She had trained in the Atacama ruins, breathed dust storms thicker than this. She had lost people, good ones, in places just like this. If anything, the sand was cleaner. A warning buzz echoed across the field as one competitor's, a shriveled sponge creature from Belt Delta, folded in on itself and burst with an embarrassing squelch. Yellow steam rose from its remains. Somewhere in the commentary booth, a gelatinous host groaned, and there goes blibble of Delta 4. So much for hyperabsorption. Ellie didn't look up. She had her hands pressed to the warm sand, feeling the rhythm beneath it. The whole place was wired, rigged with sensors and amplifiers, probably even responsive terrain. This wasn't just a trial, it was a show. But shows had patterns, and patterns could be timed. Above her, one of the referee drones zipped low, scanning for moisture violations. The cube beside her gave a soft, polite ping, like a toaster announcing judgment. The scan passed without incident. She sat back and stretched her spine. Her breath was even. Around her, movement shifted. Tactical desperation, mostly. The avian scrant were beginning to molt in clumps, scattering brittle feathers into the wind. A reptilian quad beast from Sector G had tried digging a shade trench, but now lay curled at the bottom, tongue black and cracked. Then there was him. Crawl Talk hadn't moved far from his starting position. He didn't need to. His physiology burned slow, armored in moisture-retaining scales. His people had been bred for volcanic deserts, forced to thrive where oceans once stood. Every drop of water inside his body was a fortress. He radiated smugness like heat from a thermal core. Earthling, he said suddenly, his voice like shifting tectonics, amplified for effect. You dry yet? Ellie stood slowly. Dust slid from her knees. She tilted her head just slightly. Depends. You panting yet? There was a pause. The crowd hissed in surprise. You mock me, he asked. She squinted at him. the corners of her mouth tugging up. No, I wouldn't mock someone who thinks standing still is a tactic. That would be rude. The crowd erupted in noise. Some laughed, others booed. Ellie turned, walked a slow, deliberate circle around her cube. She crouched beside it and adjusted a small dial on its side. The mesh at its center glimmered, then glowed, faint blue. Crawl Talk didn't laugh. He simply flexed one hand and turned his full body toward her. A message chimed in her internal neural band, a private channel. Her handler, Miles, sharp-voiced and always slightly annoyed. Ellie, you really want to antagonize the reigning champion of 6 systems? You do remember we're still technically under contract. She blinked twice to acknowledge, then subvocalized. He started it. Ellie, I'm not here to win, remember? Just don't die dramatically. Or stupidly. Copy. She shut the channel off with a twitch of her jaw. She hated the sound of worry in other people's voices. It made her fingers itch. Ellie rose again and glanced upward. One of the observation pods had dimmed slightly. The Draken delegation, watching closely now, no longer amused, maybe irritated, maybe nervous. Good. Crawl Talk took a slow, stalking step toward her, claws tapping against the arena floor's glassy crust. A ripple of silence followed him, like people holding their breath. You carry a cube, he growled, and wear a net. You wear no armor. You wield no blade. Are you bait? Ellie smiled, the kind of smile that hadn't meant warmth in a very long time. I'm the Sponge, remember? The nickname had followed her across systems. Pink Sponge, a derisive term for humans, soft, absorbent, dependent on water like parasites. She didn't mind it. Let them think she was squishy. Sponges survived nuclear fallout and boiling water. Sponges endured. A second alien collapsed, this one from the Andubian tides, their pale, fluid-filled suits finally punctured by environmental stress. The announcers howled again, calling it the first real splash of the day. Ellie barely heard them. Her focus had narrowed. The sun was nearing apex. Peak heat, that meant the lowest humidity, and also the moment her system would begin pulling molecules at their fastest rate. She tapped her wrist cuff. A soft chime. Inside her tunic, woven filaments activated, drawing microscopic water vapor across her shoulders, collecting it along tension seams. Slow, steady, invisible. The rules allowed for ambient interaction. It was only the storage of liquid that was outlawed. Her setup didn't store. It cycled. The first droplet formed along the mesh and rolled down into the collar wick. Ellie inhaled. Cool breath. Across the arena, Crawl Talk's tongue flicked out. Fast, unintentional. A reflex. A dry reflex. She caught it. Their eyes met. For the first time, she saw it. Confusion. He couldn't smell fatigue on her. Couldn't detect heat distress. And he didn't understand why. Not yet. She turned her back on him. Walked 3 slow steps. Saturday. The message that followed came not through comms, but through the arena speakers. Translated for all. You are arrogant, little sponge. You insult the trial. Ellie looked up. No, she said quietly. I'm respecting it more than you are. The audience hushed. Even the announcers paused. Because the human hadn't cracked. She was hydrating. And the trial had only just begun. The Draken moved first. Not with haste, but with ceremony. Each clawed footfall scorched the sand beneath him, steam rising in angry spirals as if the desert itself objected to his passage. The announcers launched into mock poetic ecstasy. Behold, the glorious flame walker of the 5th era, stride of the Titan-blooded sovereign. But Ellie tuned them out. Their adoration was predictable, prepackaged. This wasn't about showmanship. This was heat management. She lay still, half curled near the slope of a glass dune, eyes half-lidded as she watched her cube hum quietly beside her. It had reached phase 2, microlattice condensation, tuned to draw from ambient vapor down to the 10th percentile. The black casing buzzed like a gnat trapped in prayer. Crawl Talk approached steadily. No rush. He had time, and he knew it. The arena's heat favored him. His blood retained moisture like honey in a sealed jar. His lungs exhaled only trace loss. His gaze stayed fixed on Ellie like a predator, already planning which bones to display. "You lie in dust," he rumbled, voice curling over the arena like smoke. "Are you preparing to expire with dignity, or is this another human joke?" Ellie stirred just enough to glance up. "I'm boiling you," she murmured. The crowd reacted with collective gasp. In several language pods, that translated awkwardly, "I am slow cooking your pride" was a favorite among the Dazari. One announcer choked on his own excretion. The referee drone wobbled uncertainly in its orbit. Crawl Talk blinked once, twice, then he moved faster. A sudden sprint. Scales flashing, claws out, his right leg propelling him forward in a blur of trained aggression. He crossed half the arena in 3 seconds. Ellie rolled left. He struck where she'd lain, carving a smoking trench through the synthetic terrain. The sand beneath hissed and popped, releasing the signature hiss of artificial thermoglass. Ellie rolled again, faster this time, and popped to one knee, her eyes locked on his stance. He was powerful, brutally so. Every strike came from years of combat training in high-gravity war zones. His upper frame had been genetically optimized for impact, but he was sweating now, just barely. It glistened along the joints between his scales, a sheen of loss, and she only had to wait. She sprinted, not away, not toward him. She darted toward the southern ridge, toward a patch of the arena where thermal crosswinds were strongest. She could feel in her teeth the way the wind shifted there, how the sensors adapted slower than they should. Her cube had mapped it earlier, passively collecting wind flow data from its intake cycle. Crawl Talk followed. He had to. The crowd demanded it. He roared, "Run, sponge. Let them see your fear." Ellie didn't respond. Her feet moved with quiet calculation. Heel toe, arch bent slightly inward, preserved skin tension. Every motion conserved effort. Every breath shallow, recycled through the microvalve in her collar. She reached the ridge and dropped again, letting the heat roll over her as Crawl Talk crested the slope behind her. "You mocked the trial," he snarled. Ellie didn't move. "You disgrace your species." She turned her head slightly. Her hair, damp at the roots, clung to her temple. "You're overheating." The words landed with eerie calm. And now the cracks began to show. Crawl Talk paused, just slightly. His nostrils flared. His tail dipped. One claw twitched involuntarily. Ellie tapped her wrist again. Her tunic's mesh gave a low chime. The black cube at the base of the slope began to glow a soft, saturated blue. Phase 3, vapor flashpoint. The crowd was murmuring now. Across the upper levels, murmurs turned into debates, into angry gesturing, into nervous recalculation of betting odds. The announcers were trying to explain it in real time. It appears the human's device has created a condensation feedback loop, harvesting ambient humidity generated by, other competitors' failures. She wasn't just surviving. She was drinking them. Crawl Talk didn't wait for a verdict. He charged again, now visibly faster, desperate. Ellie let him. She waited, counted his strides. 3, 4, 5. On the 6th, she kicked the cube. It rolled down the slope, hit the flat plane below, and cracked open, not with violence, but precision. A single pulse emitted from its core, harmless in appearance. But in truth, it triggered the capacitor filament in her tunic, which pulsed upward. The air superheated for a second, pulling every nearby molecule into a single high-pressure stream. And then, steam. Hot, humid, glorious steam. Crawl Talk stepped directly into it. His eyes bulged. For a creature optimized to retain hydration, sudden saturation was the one pressure point he couldn't tolerate. His internal cooling system kicked into overdrive, venting precious moisture into the air around him in massive gulps. His scales hissed. His footing slipped. His breath came ragged. Ellie stood up, walked down the slope, one step at a time, each footfall silent. He tried to lift his arm. She reached him before it rose. With one hand, she pressed 2 fingers to the side of his neck, right at the thermal nerve junction exposed just behind the gill plate. He dropped like a tower losing its purpose. Silence. A long, uncomfortable silence. Then, uproar. The crowd didn't know how to process it. Half screamed, half wept. One Yenti priest collapsed in spiritual agony. The announcers shrieked over each other. General Crawl Talk is down. Disqualified by saturation shock? Ladies and sentients, the pink sponge just boiled the dragon. Ellie didn't bow. She didn't wave. She just turned to the referee drone, whose 37 eyes blinked in stunned unison. Rule 17, she said calmly. Ambient manipulation. The drone paused, then gave a single chirp of acknowledgement. She walked off the field. Behind her, Crawl Talk twitched once in unconsciousness. Water pooled beneath him in slow, defeated ripples. Ellie didn't look back, because she wasn't finished yet. They were still arguing when Ellie reached the tunnel. A dozen species, dozens more opinions, and not a single consensus. The trial hadn't seen an outcome like this in centuries. Not since the Humid War Crimes incident, when a participant dissolved their opponent's brain using a legally ambiguous mushroom that had taken 4 cycles of committee meetings to resolve. This, however, this was worse, because she hadn't cheated. She'd followed the rules, twisted them, sure, but obeyed them to the letter. The referee drone hovered beside her as she walked, twitching nervously, 3 of its eyes locked on her, the others furiously scanning transcripts and translation protocols. You exploited a thermal loophole. It squeaked in a dozen harmonics at once. Technically compliant, but ethically ambiguous. Ellie didn't break stride. You want ethics. You shouldn't host blood sports in an oven. It made a distressed chirp and floated backward. The corridor walls were made of sin stone, the color of overcooked clay. Cameras flickered in the corners, their lenses tracking her like uncertain animals. Somewhere behind them, galactic dignitaries were no doubt screaming into private channels, demanding explanations, launching inquiries, tearing apart contracts. She'd seen it before. The aftermath of unexpected human victories always smelled the same, like scorched paperwork and deflated superiority. At the far end of the corridor, her handler was pacing. Miles stopped when he saw her, exhaled, then shook his head like a disappointed brother watching his sibling steal a tank. "You know you've just guaranteed yourself a tribunal hearing on 4 systems," he said. 5, Ellie corrected. "I borrowed the capacitor filament from a Gluthon mining patent. Technically, that counts as export theft." He sighed. "And Crawl Talk." "Infirmary," she said. "He'll live." "Probably." She paused. "Assuming he doesn't drown on the way home." Miles rubbed his temples. "They called you a primitive, a moisture parasite. They didn't even want to pronounce your name correctly. And now you've made him a meme." Ellie blinked. "I don't know what that means anymore." "It means somewhere right now, 1,000 teenagers are uploading remixes of you kicking your condensation cube into orbit while a Draken faints in slow motion." A pause. "Good," she said, then added, "I hope they choose a decent soundtrack." Miles stared at her. "You weren't supposed to win." "I know. You were supposed to show cooperation, lose with grace, strengthen diplomatic ties." "I hydrated with grace." He looked like he wanted to scream, but remembered it wouldn't help. Ellie walked past him toward the debriefing hatch. As she reached the threshold, he called after her, "What are you even trying to prove?" She paused, then turned slowly, backlit by the glowing entry field. "That the rules weren't made for us doesn't mean we're not allowed to win." He had no reply. She stepped into the chamber. Inside, the temperature was cooler, sterile white lighting, a dozen sensors syncing to her biometrics as she entered. The technician drone chirped in confusion. Her vitals weren't consistent with known mammalian endurance thresholds. Subject displays anomalous hydration stability. It buzzed. "Please submit genetic deviation code." Ellie tilted her head. "Try resilience." "Human variant." The drone blinked, then remarkably nodded. She sat. Outside, the arena was already being reconfigured. The next event would be announced within the hour. Some other test of species pride. Some other proving ground to remind Earth what it wasn't. But this one would be harder now, because someone had changed the shape of the battlefield. She'd made water out of air. That would be remembered. Far above, In the Draken Mist chamber, a delegation of noble claws was plotting their rebuttal. Protests, certainly. Maybe an embargo. Definitely a smear campaign. But the image of Crawl Talk, unconscious and wet, would circulate faster than their outrage. Some wounds couldn't be unshamed. Ellie reclined slightly in the chair, closing her eyes for the first time since the trial began. She could still feel the heat of the sand under her skin. Still taste the sterile moisture from the condenser lining her collar. The battle hadn't been fair. But she hadn't wanted fair. She wanted proof. Proof that survival wasn't owned by the strong. That intelligence could sweat in silence. That sometimes the softest species understood the hardest truths. The door hissed open behind her. A sound of small, rapid footsteps. She turned. A child. Alien. Wide-eyed. Maybe Skren-adjacent, holding the broken black cube with both hands. Its downy feathers were damp, eyes impossibly bright. Ellie stared. "Where did you get that?" she asked. The child looked nervous, then excited. You dropped it. It still hums." Ellie stood. She walked over, took the cube gently, inspected it, still functioning. Somehow, the child looked up. Can I build one?" Ellie met their gaze. Saw something in it she hadn't expected. Admiration. Not awe. Not fear. Curiosity. Wanting to understand. She handed the cube back. "Try," she said. "The air's full of water. You just have to want it bad enough." The child beamed. Then ran. Ellie stood alone. The lights dimmed. A chime signaled the official close of the trial. The system would forget the name of most who entered, but hers would stay. A whisper, a caution, a joke in some circles, a doctrine in others. The woman who breathed water, the pink sponge who boiled the dragon. And somewhere, beyond bureaucratic echoes, beneath the weight of old galactic pride, a quiet wind carried her name through the dust. Not loud, but permanent.